Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
You're right. Tonight we have Mike Sheffer, the Director of Education for the FoolProof Foundation. Before we get going, Matt, my favorite part, you just met Mike a couple minutes ago, so you don't quite know what we're even talking about yet.
Nope.
So Mike, get us started. Go back as far as you want. I mean, I know a lot about you. Don't go back to like your days of youth basketball or anything like that. but start wherever you want.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, guys. I've been looking forward to this. Yeah, I'm Mike Sheffer. I am now the Director of Education for the FoolProof Foundation, but I came to Central New York, the Finger Lakes area, out of college. I grew up on the border of New York and Vermont, small town, Hoosick Falls, New York. My brother was a great athlete, valedictorian of his class, and I was like, uh-oh. So I took a business class and really liked it, and went to Oswego State, played basketball there, was a dual major in business and education, and that came about when I was a junior. My college coach came to me and said, Bishop Cunningham, the Catholic school, needs an 8th grade coach. I gave him your name. They're going to be calling your apartment. And of course, the funny story is I said, Coach, I don't have time for that. We're playing Geneseo next week and all that. And he said, Mike, you don't play that much. You got plenty of time. So, so I started coaching and enjoyed it. I walked into my college counselor's office and said, I need a dual major, one in education and one in finance. So we kind of put it together, and I stayed one summer. So I graduated in '86 from Oswego and got offered 5 or 6 jobs, and decided to go to Spencer Manhattan outside of Ithaca, which I had no idea where that was. But my brother was a junior at Cornell, so I thought that would be cool. And I'm 22 years old, and I'm on Bill Caruth's staff as a varsity or JV basketball coach, offensive coordinator for football under Bill Bryant, a local legend in Ithaca, New York, and Jim Cronkite's baseball staff, and department chairperson at 22 years old. So I spent 5 years in Spencer. It was a great place to learn your craft as an educator. I worked basketball camps my entire life, really. I got to know Mike DeMent at Cornell University. Mike was there at the time. They just came off Ivy League championship. Mike called me into his office. I was running his camp, and he says, I'm going to fire my 3rd assistant, and you're my guy. And I go, what? So I became Mike's assistant at Cornell for 2 years, stayed working in BOCES to keep myself in the teacher retirement system, got offered the assistant at University of North Carolina, Greensboro with Mike, and turned it down. I got offered the head basketball coach, department chair at Corning East High School at the time, and probably the best decision I ever made is, going back to high school and teaching. So I spent my career in Corning. I taught business and finance. I was an international baccalaureate teacher there, and kind of led me into my career at this point now. But so I taught money skills every day, to kids. And I always wondered if they didn't take a business class and they weren't talking to their parents about money, where were they getting these skills? So Corning Credit Union is, a big player in the area, and they called and said they have a speaker in Ramar Sutton who did a lot of senior citizen type financial literacy scams against seniors. And I knew Ramar. I actually studied him in grad school a little bit. He's an interesting story. He's kind of like a consumer advocate. He's like Ralph Nader, but he's not political, and that type of thing. So long story short, he comes over to school. We meet. He's got a young intern, Will DeHoo, and Will gives this speech to my class against scams against youth. It was my business law class. And I really liked the idea. I like the whole concept of, kind of being aware of what's out there and how to be careful with you and your money. So we started talking and just started talking about the process of how do you teach kids financial literacy if they don't take a class. So Will was he's from Holland. He was, at the time, he was 23, 24 years old. My kids really liked him. It wasn't me. I mean, that's, kids, they get a little tired of their teacher. I mean, they do, because, we teach, we're control freaks. This is how it's going to be. Those types of things. And I don't care how much shared interaction we have, you're still the authority figure. So they kind of gravitated toward Will. And I said, how if we teach financial literacy talking to kids, not at kids? So they liked the idea. And well, we can't travel this young kid around the country all the time. No one can afford that. So we started writing modules, and we started writing curriculum, and we started looking at how we were going to do this. And so I worked behind the scenes. I still taught and coached right up until August of 2017. I was the director of education. I was put on the FoolProof Foundation. We created our own foundation, but I kept it kind of low key. I didn't want anybody to think I was, I just wanted to teach. I thought that this would be a great way to help in the situation. So we have now turned this into 1.1 million users, over 9,000 schools, and 18,000 plus teachers that use FoolProof. So we have turned this into quite a robust curriculum for middle schools and high schools. We have a program for young adults. We have a full website for each state. And by the time this airs, our partnership with Troutwood, the financial app, will spring on the press release. And Troutwood is a leading fintech company that their technology is unbelievable to show kids how they can build wealth, conflict-free. FoolProof's 100% free. There's no catch. There's no advertising on FoolProof. We're funded by credit unions across the country, sponsors. It's amazing that what we do across the country with 10 employees. So we're very proud of what we do. We've worked in Paul's classes. We're doing a big project here coming up. We'll have conversations on that in a couple of weeks. And so I travel the country now, and I do professional development for teachers. We do big student groups. Bringing Troutwood into the fold of FoolProof just gives us exposure that is really going to be really good for education. So that's and I live in Amelia Island, Florida now. So that's why we were talking about when Paul's going to come visit. So, so I've become the quintessential leaving New York, going to the warm weather guy.
No doubt.
Before you start, because I know your wheels are turning, we use FoolProof at New Visions. The 18 modulars, or am I off one because of the crypto?
19 modules, activities and assignments. We can be a full 20-week curriculum. Our biggest usage is the turnkey module-based education.
Yeah, we supplement it. We call it FoolProof Friday. Well, I didn't coin that. That's what FoolProof calls it. And they do the modules. I just log in on Monday and see what the kids have done. And obviously I supplement it with everything I do. But go ahead, Matt.
No, Mike, first of all, nice to meet you. It's great to have you. And obviously we're right in each other's backyards here, and excellent story. Really neat. I got a lot going on in my head. The first or one of the things is, why are you doing this? What's the goal? And not only what's the goal, because I'm sure the answer is going to be some sort of educate kids and give them a leg up and help them in areas that I believe they need a tremendous amount of help with. But what's in it for you? What's in it for the company? Where's this model come together from a business perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is always, you have to keep the lights on. I mean, you have to be able to
100%.
travel. I mean, especially now, travel is, I sometimes tell Paul the amount of money I spend, FoolProof spends for me to travel is just astronomical. So the first reason is that I've always believed that we need to even the playing field. Everybody should have the ability to have this information. So,
Mike, can I stop you right there? Because that's a great statement. It's a great point. It's very true. Okay, in my experience, for what there's a tremendous amount of difference between what you see from here to there, and so much of it probably comes from parenting, it comes from education, it comes from how you're raised, your background, your community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a difficult thing to do, right? Is level any playing field, let alone a life playing field, if you will. I lack a better term for it, but it's so important because talk about giving people advantages over. I don't really think over other people because I don't play against other people. I play against myself. That's how I look at it anyway. But it's a tremendous advantage for myself to have the parenting I had and the access I had and some of those kinds of things. Is that how you? I know I interrupted you, but it just like hit a nerve for me because I think it's important. Why is that important in this concept?
Well, it's interesting because I always when we started FoolProof, or even if it wasn't us, I know there's other great foundations that are doing it. If they don't take the class, where do they get it? 65% of parents would rather talk to the kids about sex than money, which is astonishing to me. So I don't know. Both my kids were finance majors, so I probably went the other way with it. But the idea is that, it's almost like this. Okay, if you have the right conversations, it's still just not enough. It's the whole idea that, so if I'm a young person, I have the ability to create my own future. Now, the only way to build wealth is either you make more money or spend less money. I mean, there's no real secret to this.
Or a combination of the two, right? That's what I always say. It's one, the other, or a combination.
Yeah. So if you don't control your spending, and you don't, fall into traps, or you don't fall into the debt culture, then your money can work for you. If your money isn't working for you, then you're always trying to catch up. So this information isn't known by everybody because, people aren't talking about it. So the whole idea is when you try to level the playing field, let's give all these kids, as young adults and everyone else, the truth. So FoolProof's not bound by anyone's money. See, we take no money from anybody that would ever try to shape our message. And of course, we don't take any money from anybody that's involved in the debt culture. So we have turned down multi-millions of dollars because that's not our mission.
You're not going to be beholden to them, right?
No. So the idea is that we need to get the information out there. So that's kind of the first part.
Right.
Now, we have a lot of states now that are involved in adding personal finance as a graduation requirement. And that comes from a lot of work from people in our organization and Next Gen's Mission 2020 or 2030, that every state will have a 20-week personal finance graduation requirement. Well, that's easier said than done. But you have a tremendous amount of push right now that this is happening. The problem is, though, you have to get the right curriculum in front of kids with the idea that, you need to be in this capitalistic society. You've got to be able to understand the rules. There's ways that you can build your credit score. If your credit score is high, then it makes you advantageous to lenders, insurance companies, and everything else. This information needs to be shared, and it needs to be shared at a young level. But in education, it also has to be standard driven, because if it doesn't meet the standard, then of course, It's not going to be curriculum in the schools. So we have like a twofold mission. Number one, we can force feed financial literacy curriculum in the middle schools and the high schools because schools choose to use it. But you have to keep it interesting, and you have to talk to students. You can't talk at students because you will lose them. So the whole idea was to create something that students would actually come to after they're forced to do it. And that's been kind of the key. And that's why, you know, FoolProof New York. So if a young person is in their classroom and they're using FoolProof, and then they go out to buy their first automobile, we have a full car buying guide for them. But you know, their parents are going to buy an automobile too. So hopefully now we have what we call trickle up education. They've taken it back to their home. So we're trying to create learning communities on having conversations about money. So from a business, go ahead.
Let me ask you real quick on on that. I love the trickle up. I think that's fantastic. That's really neat. When you, why are we not having these conversations, in your opinion? Because when you talk about it, I remember the first time, Paul, this was years ago, I went in your classroom and I asked everyone in there just on a whim, who here knows how much money your parents make? And I said, raise your hand. I don't think one person did. Mm-hmm. And then I was fascinated by it, Mike. So I ask it every time I speak in a class, and I'll bet you it's 5%. So to your point earlier, very rarely do students know to me, that's kind of a bridge to, if they don't know what their parents make, they're not having those conversations, is my hypothesis anyway. And I think that's a problem. But how do you get these conversations going? I love the trickle up concept. That's a great way to put it. But why are so few of these conversations happening, in your opinion? And I hate to interrupt you, but you hit on these like buttons for me, and I can't help but jump in. I'm very curious.
That's the best way to do a podcast, to be honest. So I believe, and I do a ton of these. So yeah. So when I asked Paul, I said, you got the notes for this? He goes, you'll be fine. So
I was right.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that, again, are the parents comfortable with their money?
Yes.
And they're not. There's only certain ones that are comfortable with it and having that conversation and everything else. So we have to take this from, a conversation that this is something, again, this is something that should be discussed. Like, I was in Paul's class, had a great day with Paul's class. We did creating wealth and, work ethic and, all these different things. And we talked about this poor girl that shared her story that, she's spending $150 a month at Dunkin' Donuts. Okay. So we invested her $150 and, kind of blew her mind. But the idea is that, again, I did tell the kids when we were talking about education, and we talk about ankle deep, knee deep, butt deep, shoulder deep, and student loan debt. Are you having a realistic conversation with your parents about who's paying for this? Okay. Right. So technically, to me, that's too late. That's too late. After you get accepted at the colleges, this is way too late to have that conversation. So the idea is that, why is this an issue? I do believe it is the education base of the parents on how they feel comfortable with their finances. So we like to do the entire holistic approach, that we want to help educate everyone in that process. Now, our biggest product is FoolProof for schools, middle schools and high schools, because we have a solution to the problem. I mean, our curriculum is one of the best out there, and it's easy to implement and all that. But the whole idea was to really just to try to educate. So, I've been in education, I've been in personal finance. I just turned 60. So I started to figure out, I've been in this game 40 years, 32 in the class. Maybe, 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, I wasn't really thinking about it, but I was in the classroom pretty quick after that. So technically, 38. 38 years in this whole process, it hasn't really changed that much, because I don't know if all the right information's out there. There's a lot of misinformation. We have to teach kids how to, of course, because of technology, how to differentiate between what's real and what's not. Of course, now with AI, everything can be created in AI, and anything can be created to make it look like, oh yeah, this is the way to go. Kids want to be involved in crypto. Crypto's, we can't put our head in the sand. We have to educate them about crypto. But again, FoolProof has a kind of a mantra that we're going to teach students critical thinking skills, be a healthy skeptic, rely on research, and everything you do with your money skills. And we've been able to put that in the module base. So as the students go through the modules, they're able to kind of make decisions. But what I kind of noticed a change about 5-6 years ago, when I retired from teaching and I started to go on the road full time and talking to teachers and students and all that. We got to have actionable education, because education in itself is really just knowledge. I got to be able to pull, to be able to make a decision on that knowledge that's going to be a positive effect in my wealth. So that's one of the reasons why that we were very excited to partner with Troutwood, because their technology and their app, and Paul has seen it, it gives the kids the ability to see that if they do invest early and often, and they control their spending, and they're not impulse buyers, and they're not in a debt culture, their money can work for them. And that's the biggest thing. So Troutwood has got college mapping, career mapping. Kids can compete, in investment games, all these different things to really get them excited about the process of, this is my life. These are the things that I can do with my life. And, I have 4 pillars that I teach off of. You got to earn some, you got to save some, you got to spend some, and you should give some. So how do you get to those 4 pillars? And in reality, if 3 becomes 2, you're in a debt culture. So we've got to make sure that these kids realize that, and Paul does a great job with his students for that, because he's preaching it all the time, is that you can start creating wealth at a very young age. And if you have a life like mine, I'm a public high school teacher, and I'm very blessed to have a great pension in New York and healthcare. But there ain't a lot of public high school teachers living in Amelia Island, Florida. So the idea is that, we were really good with our money. We were really good in our decisions, and we're able to live our best lives, and there was a lot of sacrifices, going forward. But the idea was that I think it's really important that we give all these kids that same information. You know what? Paul's kids are going to get it because of Paul, but there isn't, a lot of Pauls out there. So how about the kid that's out in the country, the rural kid or the urban kid? And teachers get a little nervous too. Like, they don't really feel comfortable teaching personal finance. So FoolProof gives them the tools to be able to do it. So Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, a couple things. And I appreciate this, because even though I love teaching it, it's very difficult to get an 18-year-old kid to think they're going to be our age someday. It's almost impossible.
It's impossible.
Anyway, so I want to get to how you do it in the modules in a minute, but I was floored this fall when I was able to go to that Jumpstart National Educator Conference in Atlanta, where there were hundreds of teachers learning about financial literacy. And that's where I met the Troutwood founder and saw his app. And Matt, you gotta look that up when we get done, the Troutwood app right on your phone. It's a little green. Is it like an acorn or?
Yeah, so it's a tree, which is kind of cool. But the emoji throughout it is like an acorn out of an oak tree. It's their brand,
It's so simple. So things like that work, and the movement's real. What'd you say earlier? 15 states right now have mandated a financial literacy course, right? New York's coming.
New York's coming. So right now, I would say It's 2023. By 2025, I think it'd be over 20. Now remember, everything's kind of going in clusters now. Like, we just got great funding in Kentucky, which is perfect timing because they're gonna go in 2024. Because Pennsylvania's already there, Ohio's already there, West Virginia's coming, so they get kind of clustered and they say we better keep up, in that situation. Listen, everybody, I'm not thrilled it's got to fall onto the schools to do everything, being a old school teacher, but in reality, there's no better place to do it than a mandated 20-week personal finance class. And a lot of states are adding the Part B to it as an elective. And so 32 years in the classroom or in a school, dean of students, my whole career, anytime you talk about money to your students and you relate that back to your students, it is the easiest thing to teach in the world because it's about them.
Right.
It's 100% about them. So I don't understand why not every state isn't jumping on this and everything. And they are. They're slowly seeing it. But I'm on the committee in the Florida Department of Education to get this rolled out in Florida. And where there's only 2 vendors on it, us and NextGen. I'm very grateful to be on it. And I'm on all these meetings and I'm just like shaking my head going, it isn't that hard.
No.
Here's what's got to be taught. And of course, no state is going to endorse one curriculum because they never make that decision. But, the whole idea is that you need someone in there that's in there for the right reason, not trying to get the mailing list. There's 3 million high school seniors in the United States every year. You don't tell me companies don't want that list, because once they get their hooks into you, a bank or a credit card or anything else, it's hard to get it's like fishing. You can't shake the hook. So, they want them, they want to hook them. No offense to Robin Hood, but they're as dirty as everybody else. So the idea is that, once they get them hooked, they got them and, they'll try to keep them because that's their client now and that's how they're going to make money.
So give us an example of a couple of the modules. I have them on my phone. I'm looking at them, but what makes FoolProof? I mean, I've lived it firsthand. I watched the students do it. What makes them interested in it besides the teacher just lecturing them? Like, what are some of the topics? It's not just investing.
Oh yeah. So we have 19 modules that we cover the entire gamut of personal finance, from budgeting to the difference between financial institutions, credit, insurance, bankruptcy. We have a module on gambling. Student gambling and sports gambling is out of control. So we wrote a module on that, and it's one of our most popular modules. And actually, it's in a full facelift right now. Because when we wrote it, the sports leagues were still not. They were trying to stay hands out, but you know how that is. It's all money now.
It's a whole different world now.
Yeah. So we have a full, curriculum. Any state that has standards, if there's something that not in our curriculum. So for instance, we have one on, we're starting to write something on behavioral science of money right now. And it's really interesting. And we're going to add that as a standard in the state of Florida. So when it rolls out in Florida, we'll have the correct module that's there. The one thing I think that interests students in FoolProof is they want to be online. They want to be independent. FoolProof is, tablet, laptop, headphones, go. So FoolProof for High School has 19 modules. There's over 200 videos in the modules, and all the people in the modules, the videos, are age related. So for instance, if you're a FoolProof for middle school kid, the person that's talking to you is middle school age. We hire actors and write the scripts. And then for high school, for college students, it's college students. For young adults, it's young adult. We have FoolProof Silver. You get a lot of me there, hence the silver. But the idea is that we continue with the process of talking to people, not at them. And that's been really successful for us. I think that's why our professional developments are so successful. I do it. I mean, I jump on a plane and go teach teachers how to use FoolProof or give speeches. And I mean, I did a superintendent luncheon a little bit over a year ago, and I gave the rules of the lunchroom. They've all had lunch duty. I mean, every superintendent started as a teacher or principal. So at the time, I just came off being the dean of students at Corning Painter Post High School. So I gave the rules of the lunchroom, and they couldn't stop laughing. So we're not trying to sell them something. I'm talking to them, not at them. So, but the kids are on the modules. They're being talked to, which is really important. They're on their headphones. There's pre and post tests. Kids can challenge their scores on the test. So once a teacher becomes a foolproof teacher, they get everything that we do on the back end. So they can actually create their own curriculum. They can take a suggested one from us. We grade all the tests. We have all the progress. When a student finishes a module, successfully passed the test, the standards checked off. So that's huge when it becomes a graduation requirement. And you know who's checking on that more than anybody else? The NCAA. So the NCAA is looking at it saying, wait a minute, okay, so in Oklahoma, there's a graduation requirement of personal finance. How did Johnny meet that requirement? Well, they watched 3 Dave Ramsey videos, did a little bit of Visa practical money skills. No. It's a 20-week class. How do you meet it? So we created what's called the FoolProof Passport. When they finish the module, successfully pass the exam, the standards checked off in the back end, then the teacher can export the data if needed by state ed or anybody that's looking at it. So we're able to prove that they've met that requirement to graduate or the course. So the students really like the hands-on approach to it. What I want them to do is just not, oh, I got to do this. And that's where that actionable piece of Troutwood comes in. We're going to embed Troutwood, Paul, into our curriculums. So the students are going around and say, hey, now let's do this. And you click on their link and you go out to their site. And FoolProof's reputation has gotten to be so good that we can vet other resources and bring them to teachers and bring them to students. But the one thing that we always, is it free? Is it conflict free? Is it advertising free? And what's your purpose? So technically, I'm a big believer in other foundations because, they're not trying to make a profit on it.
Mike, how do you get the buy-in from the teachers? Like what teachers are, what's their incentive? And outside of that, are you seeing any feedback from parents?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have to make sure that they know FoolProof's out there. I mean, that's the biggest thing. So, hey, great teachers are born, good teachers are made, bad teachers exist. So there's another quote for you. So the great teachers are going to go out online and look for stuff and try to implement it in their classroom, all that. Good teachers kind of need to get it out in front of them. Hey, I went to a conference. I saw this FoolProof thing. I'm going to look at it. Bad teachers are bad teachers. It is what it is. We're trying to save them as best we can. So the idea is that we have to continue to, the nice thing about FoolProof is when I give my presentations, my beginning slide is other resources. No one else does that. I mean, no one else is going to say, hey, listen, we got a great product. I'm going to show it to you, but I believe in diversity of curriculum. I'm a teacher. These are the things that I think that can help you in the classroom. So you get that little buy-in with them right away. You tell them, they can tell you're a teacher. I mean, teachers can spot teachers. Teachers are the worst audience, by the way. So you better be prepared and you better be on your A game, because if you try to phone it in with a teaching group, it's not going to go well. So what we try to do is show them the benefits of FoolProof and how easy it is to implement it. And Paul will tell you it's the most simplistic thing for teachers to implement into their existing class or use us, as their entire class. So that's the first thing. What we're hearing now is that teachers are getting back to us and the parents are saying to them, I wish I would have learned more of that when I was in school. Now, I can tell you there isn't a business teacher out there, finance teacher out there that after open house, they probably heard that 50 times. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that, we tell all our teachers that this isn't just about the students. You know, I have to go to West Virginia in a couple of days, and I'm giving a big speech for FBLA, Future Business Leaders. It's a great program. I think there's 500 kids. Gene Natali, the CEO of Troutwood, and I are doing a joint presentation. We got 90 minutes with high school kids. Well, you better be on your A game there, because, you know, you got to keep it interesting and flowing. But later that day, we have all the advisors. And the one thing that I tell them is send the parents to FoolProof West Virginia. There's so many resources there for them. And now we have what's called FoolProof Solo. Solo is a very short segment of the high school module, and it's done in about 10 to 12 minutes, because that's about the attention span of someone who's not having to sit into a class and do it. So we're trying to continue to trickle this stuff up. We are just, you know, continuing in the process of making these conversations. You know, Paul and I talked to his students about how many of you have jobs. And, you know, technically, you know, Paul's teaching in Nirvana, by the way, so everybody knows that. But so they're great kids, and, you know, and they all have jobs, or they're all these different things. So how are you getting paid? And a lot of them say, you know, direct deposit. Some are this whole pay debit card for young people is like the next scourge of how they get taken advantage of. So that's a great way to do a community group about when your young, you know, child goes to get their first job, do they have a relationship with a financial institution? Now, inner city kids are going to say, I'm not going to have a relationship with a financial institution because they stole all our money. Well, that's really not true, but it's not really false either. So technically, you've got to be able to get that trust factor that they, you know, you go to a community bank or a local credit union and they get a relationship with a financial institution so they can have their money direct deposited. Because by law, there's only two ways they have to pay you now: direct deposit or pay debit card. They do not have to write you a check anymore. So that's a great way to have a conversation with parents and, you know, young students. And to be honest, it's been happening a lot in community groups. So I'm a huge believer in that whole buy-in, you know, and if kids are going home talking to their parents about what they're learning in school, that's probably a good thing.
Mike, let me ask you this, and this might be the most important question here, is, and this is such a new concept in the sense of what you're, it's not a new concept by any means, but trying to actually actively do what you're appears to be successfully doing, and kudos, because it's such a great thing. But how do you measure success?
Yeah, that's a great question. So longitudinal studies of after kids have finished the program and gone out into the real world cost millions and millions of dollars. We take no information from any student. Again, it's privacy laws. Everything is created username and password. We do have students that use FoolProof Solo, and once they're past the age of 18, they can use their, you know, emails and all that. We are actually starting a process to really kind of go through of, you know, the knowledge that you've learned, what actions have you taken to be able to, you know, make a difference in your, you know, your personal financial life. So that's something that on the horizon. If you know a huge donor, let me know. I think it's a great program. But here's how we do it inside of what we do. So every FoolProof module has a test. Every FoolProof module has a pre-test embedded in the first 3 to 4 slides. Before any information is given, we ask, you know, module type questions: credit, savings, you know, budgeting, you know, whatever the module's on. As soon as that exam is, you know, the pre-test is done, they take the test. The teacher inside of a millisecond gets the students pre and post. So the pre and post then are in that process of, we're able to show the standard learning objective in and out of the module. In 2022, because 2023 is not done yet, we do everything by a calendar year as how we look at it. 650,000 tests were taken. That was our sample size, 650,000 tests. The standard learning objective average in and out of module was 34.7%. So they're learning in and out. I mean, it's amazing to me. So I always wonder if the number's right. I mean, it's a pretty good number. I mean, you're getting 30% increase in your knowledge. We did a program with Florida State football last summer. They get name and likeness money and all that. Florida State's director of academics reached out to us, and they wanted us. I went in and did this great presentation. The punter was bigger than me, and Paul knows I'm not little, and the punter was bigger than me. So it was awesome. I get the whole stadium tour, the whole deal. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. I'm a Florida State fan now, right now. I'm not lying. Got to meet the staff, the whole deal. So we're in there. I do a presentation about them personally and go through, and then in their summer program, they did FoolProof for high schools. We took every mention of high school out of the module, but Florida State wanted that. They didn't want solo. They wanted the rigor and relevance of a full, and this was before crypto was done, 18 modules. Now remember, with the transfer portal, and I can talk sports as long as I can talk personal finance, so we could do another one of these, but in the transfer portal, there are football players and basketball players that are 25 years old with COVID and everything else. So you're going from 18 to 25 years old. Now, remember, if you're a Division I athlete, you have done nothing for yourself. Your rent's paid, your food's taken care of, everything else. And that was the concern with Florida State. They were worried about when they leave us, do they have these life skills? Their standard learning objective, again, if you take the football team and all the tests that they took, they took close to, 3,100 tests because every module has a test and everything else, 34.9%. Now, and I was wondering if I'm 24 years old, should I be a little bit more savvy and things like that? But in reality, those numbers hold up. So I would love to take the 2023 FoolProof class, which would be over 600,000 students, and follow them for 5 years out. I think that would be cool. Yeah. But it's impossible. But I always thought that now if you go look at our website, we have a clip. We were on Good Morning America about 4 years ago, and so it was just a really good clip, a great story. The last clip is from Sean Rowe, who played basketball at Corning East High School, was one of my students, went to RIT. Sean was from a family that didn't have a lot, went to RIT, came back home after, got a job with Corning Inc., lived with his mom to be able to save money, never had a credit card, not a car payment, paid his student loans off early. Sean's biggest regret as a kid, they had to sell their little lake house on Cuca Lake when mom and dad got divorced and everything else. Sean and his sister bought their mother a lake house, and we shot. Good Morning America came to his lake house and shot it there. And he said the only reason that I could have this right now is what I learned in FoolProof.
Wow.
Now, granted, that doesn't happen all the time, but I sat in the back, and I'm an emotional guy, and I was like wiping away the tears. I'm like, okay, I guess what we're doing is making a difference. But so you have those stories that I hear from former students and different things. I mean, then the cool thing about FoolProof, it was created in my classroom. I had the best marketing research group. I had a group of 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to run stuff by. And I have a former player and a former student that is a co-owner of a huge roofing company in Kentucky. And he reached out to me for something for his employees. He remembers,
right?
And he goes, I can't get him in the match. because they're living paycheck to paycheck. I said, I bet you they got $400, $500 truck payments.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He goes, and half of them, we give them a company truck, that type of stuff. So he's thinking about happy employees, financially strong employees, healthy employees, mentally strong, no food insecurity. They're better employees. So that's FoolProof's next mission, is to create an employer-employee program that partners with Troutwood to be able to have employers be able to give these tools to their young employees and middle managers and all that, so they have the information, because we're hearing a lot from employers right now that they're not even in the match because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And the employers are like, listen, we need to keep these employees. We're having trouble finding people. We're giving them, we got some employers that are talking to us, they're 8% match. They're 10% match. And they're only getting 24 to 28% participation. So that's blowing their mind. And I said, we got to teach them that they need to control their spending. You can't invest in your own wealth if money's going out the door at a fast pace. You've got to be able to have, and Paul knows, he preaches it all the time. You have to earn some, save some, spend some. So that's kind of our next mission on this, and just, trying to continue with the, getting FoolProof out there. We have a very aggressive 2023. We're just going to keep rolling and do the best we can. We're looking to expand FoolProof, and, funding is always a thing that you chase. Here's a great business model. Give us money and we're not going to do anything for you.
Hey, Mike,
it worked. I don't know. It worked.
You've already solidified a second and third and fourth time coming back on this podcast, because the 401ks I actually do for clients, it's about, you're lucky if you get 25% participation from the employees. I know Matt and you behind the scenes might be talking now about how to retain employees, right, Matt? And
you hit a nerve with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, it's hard out there right now. And, I think employers are doing a really good job trying to work with their employees. I remember back in the day, you don't go to work, you're done. Now it's like, hey, can I work at home for 2 days? Can I do this? Can I do that?
That's another conversation. We're not getting Matt started on that today. And then, so we've got 401k stuff, we got employee stuff, we got what you're doing next, and we'll talk about the successful project my students will be implementing with FoolProof in the middle school, but we'll save that for another day. How's that?
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. We have actually 8 of those going to be running here right now. So it all started in the New Visions think tank up there. So we're looking forward to it. We got to talk on getting this thing started. It's just, there's a lot of things. Kids are really interested right now. They are very interested. It is. I'm starting to do more. I stepped away from student presentations just because it's, I need to get to the decision makers and, get this rolling in a lot of places. But I've kind of fallen back into it, and I've enjoyed it. And, I'm going to try to be in 2023, 2024, like 50-50, students and teachers. Again, you got to capture their attention right away. I mean, that's the biggest thing. But when you're talking about them, in their lives, and the one thing we tell teachers too is share your story. Share your story with your students. I don't want I don't want your students to know everything about you, but share your stories, your successes, and your failures. And we try to do that in FoolProof as well, because everybody's coming from a totally different place. No one's coming from the same place.
Never.
So 12 days, we will have a meeting at your place about the middle school project when I'm down there.
Yeah, we better start before that, boss. I mean,
Well, I'll talk to you before that, and we're gonna find a way to get Matt out to that conference in Arizona next fall.
Yeah, I mean, just to plug Jumpstart National. Jumpstart is, the clearinghouse for financial literacy educational resources. Hey, Paul, I'm actually their keynote speaker for their partner meeting in April. So think about this. They called me and asked me to be the keynote, and I go, why? And then they told me why, and I go, Wells Fargo's in the audience, Visa's in the audience, this is, and they go, yeah, you can't go after them. I said, oh. I said, am I writing my speech or are you writing it? But, the whole idea is that Jumpstart, unbelievable resource, really great, 450, 500 teachers are there every year. And it's really a great think tank on teaching personal finance and getting the right resources out there and really treating teachers the way they should be treated, for a weekend. They get to feel like, and it's all about them. We're very, very glad to be a huge part of Jumpstart, and we'll continue going forward. But
okay, what's your website? I never asked you that.
So for New York, it's FoolProof, FoolProofNewYork.org. But technically it's FoolProofMe.org. Every state has its own licensing. The foundation is just FoolProofFoundation.org. If teachers want to use, FoolProof as a curriculum, it's real simple. They just go to the login site. If it's a first-time user, they fill out the registration. We vet them to make sure they're actually a teacher, so a kid doesn't get to the back end of FoolProof, and then they become a FoolProof teacher. It's that easy. So being an online digital platform, all of our PDs and teacher guides and everything are uploaded there. But we highly encourage teachers, to come to a PD or, seek one out, or because there's so many bells and whistles to the back end of FoolProof as a teacher. It's amazing what our tech team has accomplished. Pretty slick stuff. So we're very proud of it. But yeah, there's, Next Gen is another one. NGPF.org is a great one. CollegeMoneyMatters.org, great one. I mean, you guys can put that out in a podcast as well. And then of course, Troutwood, I'm just a huge fan of what they're doing. And, when you just take a look at that and you'll be like, oh my goodness. So they have some of the best computer-based people in the world working for them. And they're a startup, and I think they're going to do unbelievable things. And we're just very pleased to be at the beginning of this process to be able to give kids all this great information.
Well, this was excellent, but this just opens up the door for more times, Mike. So
yeah, we should talk name and likeness and transfer portal and all that.
Oh yeah, that's a whole right. That's a conversation.
When you said that, I tried not to go down there because we never would have come back full circle to getting your website and address and sticking to the course. But
so hey. I played in a golf tournament Saturday down here, and one of the guys in the tournament is a sports agent out of San Francisco, and I'm just going about my business, and these young kids are blasting these big shots, and I'm just butting it down the middle, and he goes, so what do you do? And I told him, he goes, are you serious? We got to have lunch. He goes, because I'm struggling on the daily aspects of, money management. And I said, well, we're really trying to get this in the forefront. So, people don't get taken advantage of. They, it's really, it's hard out there, and you just got to make sure that, you're a critical thinker, you're a healthy skeptic, and you rely on research. And, when I was telling him that, he goes, wow, it's that easy, isn't it? I go, yeah, it is. But, you have to, continue in that process. So it's amazing how many people are like, that's a great idea. Yeah. It's something that should be done. And I think it's really, I call this a snowball rolling downhill. I mean, it's rolling fast in every state. And FoolProof's just trying to keep up and continue to support everybody that we can, and in the process.
All right. So we're going to end. It's that easy. Just do it and go to foolproofme.org. There. We could have said that a minute.
There you go.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, guys. It was great. I appreciate it.